Storytime are the most dirtiest college roommate ever. By the way, we're calling her Jessie. So I moved in before Jessie and I get settled and decorate. The next day, she comes and throws her bag on the bed, then leaves. I thought it was weird because she didn't even say anything to me. Couple hours later, she comes back and I'm like, hello? And she's like, my bad, and comes gives me a hug. She smelled very bad. She starts unpacking all of her clothes and blankets, but they smelled like mildew. Anyways, a week later, there's this party going on for freshmen, and she goes, but I stay in because I had a migraine. I told her that when she comes back, can she keep the light off? Now it's 2 a.m., and she comes back in very loud, uses the bathroom, then goes to sleep. And now I'm up, so I got up to use the bathroom too. When I sit down on the toilet, I feel something very squishy. It was dark because, like I said, I had a migraine. I get up, turn the light on, and I was sitting in her shit. This story time is how I found out my boyfriend lied about his age. At the time, I was 15, and I found out he was 32. By the way, we're calling him Jake. So I met Jake at a college party, and I was able to go because my sister had just entered college, and I begged her to take me. So I had fun. I ended up meeting Jake, and from there we started talking. He told me he was still in college, and of course I told him I was still in high school. At the time he told me he was 18, and he slightly looked older, but I guess he just looked older for his age. And I know we weren't supposed to date at these ages, but my dad was 5 years older than my mom, and I didn't think that it was that bad being 3 years apart. We were together for 10 months. When my birthday came around, he wanted to take me out on a date. He picked me up from home and drove me to a restaurant, and 5 minutes before we get to the restaurant, he gets pulled over for not having his lights on. The cops asked for his ID, he showed the cops, and he put it down. I took a look at his ID, and it said he was born in the 1980s. It gets really bad after this. Let me know if y'all want a part 2. This is part 2 of how I found out my boyfriend lied about his age. At the time, I was 15, and I found out he was 32. So like I said earlier, he had got pulled over by the cops, and he asked for his ID. When he had got it back, he had put his ID in his cup holder. I took a glance, and I saw he was born in the 1980s. When the cops left, we drove off. Then I asked him, Jake, how old are you again? He's like, 18. Why'd you ask that? I picked up his ID and pushed it into his face. He quickly steps on the brake and snatches it from me. I was like, take me home. He said, no, it's a fake ID. I was like, what do you need a fake ID for? Where's your real one? He looked at me in shock. Then I told him I wanted to leave. I try to open up the car door to leave, and he tells me, you're not going nowhere. Guys, this is when it gets really scary. Y'all let me know if y'all want a part 3. This is part 3 of how I found out my boyfriend lied about his age. At the time, I was 15, and I found out he was 32. Okay, so like I said before, I saw his ID, and I could tell he was lying about how it was fake. So I immediately wanted to get out. I try to open up the door, but it doesn't open. I told him to let me out. He responds, you're not going anywhere, and you're not leaving me. I then start pushing on him to get me out. He stops and says, if you keep pushing on me, we're going to crash. So I grabbed my phone and I called the police. He took my phone and threw it out the window. And I'm like, where the hell are you taking me? Guys, this is when it gets really dangerous. Y'all let me know if I should make a part 4. This is part 4 of how I found out my boyfriend lied about his age. At the time, I was 15 and I found out he was 32. So I tried to call the cops, and he took my phone and threw it out the window. I didn't know what else to do, so I just started throwing hands. And in the process, he ended up hitting the car in front of him. He created a big dent in the back of the car, and the car in front stopped. And the guy in the car jumps out and starts yelling at Jake. I start waving my hand for help. He backs up and runs back to his car. I was confused at first, until I saw the police arrive 5 minutes later. So I guess he had called the police. When the police got there, they had patted Jake down, they asked questions, and investigated the whole car accident. They asked me questions about what happened, and I told them. I ended up having to tell my parents. We had to go to court. Jake, on the other hand, went to prison. The whole situation was weird, and he lied throughout the entire relationship. After everything was over, I learned my lesson with guys like him. I now do background checks on any guy I date. This story time is how my boyfriend got my sister pregnant. At the time, I just graduated college, and I moved into an apartment with my boyfriend. My sister at the time was 2 years younger than me, and she was still in college. But she ended up dropping out because she said school wasn't for her anymore. My parents were upset that they had paid for school, and she dropped out in the middle of it. So they kicked her out, and me being the older sister, I let her live with me and my boyfriend until she got back on her feet. My sister was also depressed at the time, but me and my boyfriend would always cheer her up. As weeks went by, she ended up getting a job at Target, and she helped pay for some of the bills towards the apartment. One day when she gets back from work, she comes into my room saying that she wasn't feeling well and just passed out. She wasn't waking up, so I took her to the hospital. When we got to the hospital, they told us that she was pregnant. Part 2 will be up soon. This is part 2 on how my boyfriend got my sister pregnant. So like I said earlier, my sister passed out and I took her to the hospital, and come to find out she was pregnant. I was happy for her, of course, but she never told me she was seeing anyone. When we got back home, I asked her, so who the baby daddy? She jumps and she's just like, some guy from school. I said, some guy got you pregnant? And I bust out laughing. She told me it wasn't funny. Then I asked, so who is he? She said, we don't talk no more, and ran into her room. I let it go, but I noticed something was weird. Couple weeks later, one night my boyfriend leaves our room to go to my sister's. I get up and I listen on to the conversation, and he's basically trying to convince her to get an abortion. So I walk into the room, very upset, and I ask him, why is he trying to convince her to get an abortion? And I notice he's giving her a stack of money. Part 3 of how my boyfriend got my sister pregnant. So I walked into my sister's room, and my boyfriend is handing her a stack of money, telling her she should get an abortion. I start yelling, what are you doing? My boyfriend says he's just helping her out. I scream, why are you trying to have her get an abortion? Then my sister interrupts and says, we need to tell her. She looks at my boyfriend. I'm just like, what the fuck is going on? She tells my boyfriend, we gotta tell her. I'm like, tell me what? My boyfriend says nothing. There's nothing to tell you. My sister just says straight up, the baby is his. I sit there for a second, and then out of nowhere, I just black out. I attacked him until my sister pulled me off. I went to our room. I packed up my things. I took my boyfriend's clothes, put them into a tub, poured bleach on them, grabbed my things, and left. A couple months later, my sister had the baby. It's now been 2 years, and I still haven't spoken to either my sister or my ex-boyfriend. Here's a story time on how my toxic ex-best friend got me arrested. And she's the reason why I'm banned from the only mall in our city. So in high school, I was friends with this girl, Destiny, and she was the type of friend I felt like I had to walk eggshells around. She was very cocky, but she was a thief. She always tried to get me to steal from a couple stores, but she said I was always too punk to do it. Just one day, she asked if I wanted to go to the mall with her, and I was like, yes, because I wasn't doing anything. We also ended up going to a clothing store. She asked me if I was tired of carrying my book bag. I was like, yeah, a little. And she said that she would hold it for me so my back wouldn't hurt. And I thought it was very nice of her. We ended up separating for like 3 minutes in the store, and she tells me she can't find anything. She hands me back my bag because she said her shoulders were starting to hurt. And of course, I took the bag back. When we walked out of the store, we started beeping. I was confused on why because we never got anything. The workers asked us to see our bags, and when they opened up my bag, there was a $500 jacket stuffed in my book bag. Here's another toxic best friend story time and how I ended up having to fight her over her own boyfriend. So we're calling her Regina, and at the time we just graduated college, and that's where she met her boyfriend Kyle. They were together for a couple months, but I never met him, and as the story goes on, you'll find out why. 5 months into their relationship, Valentine's Day is coming up, and I wanted to do a double date. The 14th comes, and she canceled on me last minute, and she literally said, word for word, that she doesn't need her boyfriend being tempted to try to cheat on her on Valentine's Day. I didn't like that because she was implying that I would be the reason why he cheated. Anyways, a couple months later, I planned for us to do another double date for 4th of July. So we went to the beach, and of course, we wore bathing suits. I wore a 2-piece and she wore a 1-piece with a skirt. When we get to the beach, I start to get undressed. She pulls me aside saying, why are you wearing that in front of my boyfriend? You look like a whore. Here's part 2 of how I ended up having to fight my toxic best friend over her own boyfriend. So, like I said before, we go to the beach, we start getting undressed, and my friend Regina pulls me aside saying, why would you wear that in front of my boyfriend? You look like a whore. I get mad at her and tell her that we're at a freaking beach. What else do you expect me to wear? She starts talking about how I'm always trying to show off in front of guys that she brings around. And I tell her, my date is here also. Why would I do that in front of him or you? She tells me that I'm thirsty and that I'm looking for attention. I laugh because I'm like, she gotta be joking. Then out of nowhere, she takes my towel, throws it at me very hard as though she wanted to hurt me and says, put your clothes back on, you. And guys, I crazy on this girl. Just know that at the end of the fight, she had a mouthful of sand in her mouth. And of course, the guys pulled us apart. She ended up packing all her things to go with her boyfriend, and I stayed at the beach and chilled all day. This story time is how I caught my boyfriend cheating on me with his sister. It was his stepsister, aka they weren't related, but they still grew up together, which was still weird. So me and my boyfriend had been together for 5 years, and I noticed him and his sister always had a close bond. They talk on the phone every day, and to me, it's normal because that's his sister. But recently this year, on its birthday, is when I caught him cheating on me. So my boyfriend had spent time with his family early in the day to celebrate, and I told him I was gonna come over at night. But I lied because I was going to come over early and surprise him. So I went out, I bought balloons, cake, and I even got a damn PS5. I pulled up to his place, and as I'm getting everything ready, he walks out of his place with a girl, then hugs and kisses her goodbye. And it wasn't a peck, they went in. And me, I'm like shook because I just went all out for his birthday. And when the girl turns around, it's his sister. This story time is from a follower, and she really needs advice. By the way, we're calling her Ashley, and she's 19. And also, please, no one judge her. So, Ashley is a pole dancer. She does OnlyFans, and she has a 72-year-old sugar daddy that pays all of her bills. And Ashley also has a boyfriend, but he knows the work that she does. Well, recently, Ashley wanted to get out of that type of work and go to